Diane thought she was just doing her job. For 6 weeks, she'd been making peanut butter sandwiches for the silent little girl who sat alone at the dining table every morning. She didn't know the child hadn't spoken in 2 years. She didn't know that every therapist in Connecticut, psychiatrist charging $400 an hour, had failed where she'd succeeded with nothing but patience and crusts cut into triangles. And she certainly didn't know that on a cold Tuesday morning in March, the dining room doors would burst open, not by clients or colleagues, but by the girl's father, a pharmaceutical executive who looked like he owned half of Fairfield County. When he froze in the doorway, hands still on the handle, and choked out the word stop, Diane had 2 seconds to process. He wasn't angry. He was crying, because for the first time in 730 days, he was hearing his daughter's voice. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you never get to miss our channel new stories. It is quick, free, and best way to support us in bringing more interesting stories. Your support means the world to us and motivate us to create more good stories. Tell us where you are watching from your country, city, so we can know how far our stories goes. Thank you. Let's begin the story. The chandelier in the Montgomery estate foyer cast prismatic light across marble floors that cost more than Diane would earn in 5 years. It was 7:15 a.m. in Westport, Connecticut, the kind of March morning where the cold coming off Long Island Sound doesn't just chill you. It reminds you exactly which side of the class divide you're standing on. Diane checked her reflection in the hallway mirror. At 29, she looked 35. Exhaustion had carved shadows under her dark eyes, a testament to night shifts scrubbing office buildings and online child psychology courses watched at 2 a.m. on a cracked laptop. She smoothed her black uniform dress, the one with the loose button she kept meaning to fix, and took a deep breath. She needed this job. Rent was due in 6 days, and her landlord in Bridgeport had stopped accepting late payments 3 months ago. Diane, breakfast should be ready by 7:30, Mrs. Chun, the house manager, had reminded her yesterday. The words were polite, but the message was clear: you're replaceable. Diane moved through the kitchen on muscle memory. She pulled out the whole wheat bread, the organic peanut butter, the strawberry preserves from the refrigerator that was bigger than her entire kitchen at home. She'd learned the routine. Cut the crusts. Small triangles, not squares. Then she heard it, the soft creak of the staircase. 7:20 a.m., right on schedule. Diane didn't turn around immediately, but she felt the shift in the air. The quiet padding of small feet on imported Italian tile, followed by the faint scent of children's lavender shampoo. A little girl appeared in the kitchen doorway. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. She was small for her age, swimming in yellow cotton pajamas with cartoon bunnies that were starting to fade from too many washes. Her light brown hair was pulled into a ponytail that was coming loose, pieces falling around a face that never quite met anyone's eyes. Clutched against her chest was a worn stuffed rabbit with one ear hanging by threads. She didn't look at Diane. She just walked, head down, straight to her seat at the dining room table. The one at the far end, facing the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the sound, where the morning light came in cold and white. Diane watched her from the corner of her eye. This was the routine. It started 6 weeks ago, Diane's second day on the job, when she'd found the untouched breakfast tray and the little girl sitting alone, staring at nothing. Kathy. That was her name. The daughter Mr. Montgomery never mentioned. The child who moved through this mansion like a ghost, silent and unseen. Diane placed the plate on the table, peanut butter sandwich cut into triangles, apple slices arranged in a fan, a glass of milk. Kathy didn't acknowledge it. She just sat there, clutching her rabbit, staring out at the gray water. Diane did what she'd done every morning for 6 weeks. She pulled out the chair across from Kathy. She sat down. And she waited. Not hovering. Not forcing. Just present. Pretty cold out there today, Diane said softly, glancing at the window. Bet the rabbits are all huddled up in their burrows, staying warm together. Nothing. But Kathy's fingers loosened slightly on the stuffed rabbit. Diane picked up one of the apple slices from her own plate. She always made 2 of everything now. You know what I used to do when I was little and felt quiet? I'd tell my secrets to my stuffed bear. Never said 'em out loud. Just whispered 'em real soft, so only he could hear. A beat. Then, barely perceptible, Kathy pulled the rabbit closer to her face. Diane smiled, not looking directly at her. Sometimes the quietest conversations are the most important ones. She took a bite of her apple slice. Waited. And then she heard it. The softest sound. The whisper of paper sliding across wood. Kathy had pushed a drawing across the table. Crayon on construction paper. 3 figures. One tall with dark skin, one small with a yellow dress, one small and gray and long-eared. "Is that you and your friend?" Diane asked gently, pointing to the rabbit. The silence stretched. Then, so quiet Diane almost missed it. "And you?" Diane's breath caught. She looked up. Kathy was still staring at the window, but her lips had moved. 3 syllables. The first words she'd heard this child say. "That's beautiful," Diane whispered. "Thank you for showing me." Kathy's hand moved toward the sandwich. Picked up a triangle. Took the smallest bite. And in that moment, in the cold morning light of a house that felt like a museum, something shifted. Something fragile and precious and terrifying. Because Diane knew even then that when you're invisible, when you're just the help, you're not supposed to matter this much. She was wrong about having time to prepare. 30 seconds later, the dining room doors flew open with a bang that made both of them jump. A man in a charcoal suit stood in the doorway, briefcase in one hand, phone in the other, looking like he'd forgotten something crucial. Marvin Montgomery, the father who left at 6:45 every morning and returned after Kathy was asleep. He barely glanced their way, already turning back toward the stairs, already talking into his phone about some merger or acquisition. But then he froze. His hand dropped from his ear. The phone clattered against his leg. He was staring at the table, at his daughter, at the half-eaten sandwich, at the drawing. "Kathy?" His voice cracked. Were you just?" And then Kathy, sweet, silent Kathy, looked up at her father with those big hazel eyes and said, clear as a bell, "Diane made the sandwich the way I like it, with the crusts cut off. The triangles taste better than squares." The silence that followed was deafening. Marvin's briefcase hit the floor. His expression cycled through shock, disbelief, hope, and something that looked like devastation all at once. "Stop," he choked out, stumbling forward. Not a command, a plea. "Don't stop. Please. Keep talking. Baby, keep talking." But Kathy had already gone silent again, her eyes wide with alarm at her father's intensity. She pressed back into her chair, clutching her rabbit. Diane's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd just witnessed something impossible. And from the way Marvin Montgomery was staring at her, really seeing her for the first time, she knew everything was about to change. She just didn't know if that change would destroy her. The alarm on Diane's phone buzzed at 6:15 a.m., a violent intrusion into the fluorescent-lit silence of the corporate office building. She straightened from where she'd been scrubbing the executive bathroom tiles, her knees screaming in protest, and peeled off the yellow rubber gloves that had turned her hands clammy and wrinkled. 29 years old, and her body already kept a record of every double shift, every night spent on her knees making other people's spaces pristine. She clocked out at 6:23, nodded to the security guard who never remembered her name, and walked into the March cold that felt personal. Her Honda Civic coughed to life on the third try, the check engine light glowing like a tiny emergency she couldn't afford to address. 20 minutes from the office park in Norwalk to the Montgomery estate in Westport. 20 minutes to transform from invisible nighttime cleaner to invisible daytime maid. The neighborhoods changed as she drove. Chain restaurants gave way to stone walls and iron gates. Cars got newer. Houses got bigger. By the time she pulled up to the service entrance of the Montgomery estate, never the circular front drive with its fountain and pristine landscaping, she was in a different economic universe entirely. The colonial sat on 3 acres like a museum exhibit. How the other half lives. White marble gleamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. Designer furniture positioned with mathematical precision. Family photos covered the mantel and side tables. Beautiful Elena Montgomery with her daughter, both of them glowing, frozen in a happiness that ended 2 years ago with stage for breast cancer. Diane entered through the back door. Her key, given to her 6 weeks ago with a laminated list of rules, turned silently. The kitchen was industrial grade, commercial refrigerator, gas range that cost more than 3 months of her rent, countertops that showed every fingerprint. She made coffee, set the dining table exactly as required. Wall Street Journal folded to the business section, crystal orange juice glass positioned at 2 o'clock, white plate for eggs and wheat toast. She prepared Kathy's breakfast. Today, French toast cut into strips, fresh berries arranged in a smiley face. Tomorrow it would be oatmeal with honey. Wednesday, scrambled eggs. A rotating menu of meals no one would eat. At 7:43, she heard footsteps on the stairs. Marvin Montgomery descended in a charcoal suit that probably cost what Diane made in a month. He was 41 but looked older. Grief had carved lines around his mouth, turned his eyes distant. He nodded at Diane without meeting her gaze, poured coffee she'd already made, glanced at documents she'd already organized. On the counter, appointment reminders for Kathy. Dr. Patricia Whitmore, child psychiatrist, Tuesday 4 p.m. Karen Rodriguez, speech therapist, Thursday 3 p.m. Dr. Michael Chun, occupational therapist, Friday 2 p.m. A little girl's week colonized by professionals trying to fix what grief had broken. Marvin kissed the top of his daughter's empty chair at exactly 7:58 a.m., a ritual performed for no one, and left through the front door Diane wasn't permitted to use. She watched him go, wiping down counters that were already clean. He treated his daughter like a beautiful doll that broke. Kept bringing her to repair shops instead of just sitting with her, holding the pieces. Behind her, a soft creak. Diane turned. At the top of the curved staircase stood a little girl in faded yellow pajamas, clutching a stuffed rabbit with one ear hanging by threads. And there she was, the saddest little girl Diane had ever seen. Kathy descended the stairs like someone twice her age, each step a deliberate negotiation. One small hand gripped the mahogany railing, the other dragged the stuffed rabbit, Benny, whose paws bumped against each step with a soft thud-thud-thud that echoed through the silent house. 7 years old, but grief had stolen something essential from her movements. She was too thin, shoulders hunched inward like she was trying to disappear into herself. Dark circles bruised the delicate skin under her eyes. She reached the bottom and moved through the dining room without looking at Diane, sliding into her spot at the far end of the table. The chair facing the floor-to-ceiling windows. The one where she could watch Long Island Sound turn gray and choppy under March wind, where she could be alone even when someone else was in the room. Diane had set out French toast cut into strips, berries arranged in a smiley face, a glass of milk, orange slices fanned artfully. The kind of breakfast that said I'm trying even though she knew, had known for 6 weeks, that it didn't matter how pretty the food looked. She stood in the kitchen doorway and watched. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. Kathy sat motionless, Benny clutched to her chest, staring at nothing. Diane made a decision that violated every protocol in the laminated instruction sheet Mrs. Chun had given her. She sat down across from Kathy. Not hovering. Not speaking. Just present. It had taken 3 weeks to get here. Week 1, Diane had noticed the drawings, elaborate sketches in the margins of homework, doodles on napkins. She'd bought colored pencils at the Dollar Tree with money she needed for laundry, and pushed them across the table with fresh paper. Kathy's eyes had flicked up for one startled second, the first time she'd acknowledged Diane existed. Then she'd drawn for 20 minutes before leaving for school. The food still untouched, but something had shifted. By week 2, Diane stopped making elaborate breakfasts. Peanut butter sandwiches, apple slices, crackers, simple foods a grieving child might actually eat. She brought adult coloring books and sat quietly doing her own while Kathy drew across from her. Week 3, Kathy slid a drawing to Diane. A simple flower, petals colored in careful purple. Week 4, the drawings got more detailed. Houses with smoke curling from chimneys. Animals in gardens. People holding hands. Week 5, Kathy ate an entire sandwich while drawing, so absorbed she didn't notice she was eating. Week 6, Kathy pointed at Diane's coloring book. Made eye contact. A question without words. Now it was Tuesday, the routine solidified into something sacred. 7:15, Kathy descended. Peanut butter sandwich and apple slices waiting. Coloring books out. Comfortable silence that felt like conversation. Kathy was drawing an elaborate garden scene, rabbits hidden in flower beds, a bench under a willow tree. Diane colored geometric patterns, the repetitive motion meditative. That's beautiful, sweetie, Diane said softly. Your mom must have loved gardens. Kathy looked up, nodded slowly. Her small finger pointed to the corner of the drawing, a tiny figure holding a rabbit. Is that you and Benny? Another nod. Then Kathy's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Benny was her name. The voice was barely audible, rusty from disuse. My mom's name was Elena, but I call the rabbit Benny because that's what she called me. Pumpkin Benny. Diane's breath stopped. 6 weeks of silence, and now, the front door opened. Heavy footsteps in the foyer, wrong for this time of morning. Kathy? I forgot my presentation folder. Marvin Montgomery appeared in the dining room doorway, already turning back toward the stairs. Then he froze, stared at the table, at Diane sitting with his daughter, at Kathy's mouth, still shaped around words. Stop. The word cracked through the air like a gunshot. Everything froze. Kathy's eyes went wide, her mouth snapped shut, and she retreated inward so fast Diane could almost hear the door slamming. The little girl who'd been speaking vanished back into silence. Diane stood, instinctively creating professional distance. Her chair scraped against hardwood. Marvin stared at them both, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, something that looked like hope and grief colliding. His briefcase slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. Was she? His voice shook. Was my daughter just speaking? Marvin dropped to his knees beside Kathy's chair, his expensive suit crumpling. Sweetheart, can you talk to Daddy? Please? I heard you. I know you can do it. Kathy buried her face in Benny's threadbare fur, her whole body curling inward like a fist closing. The little girl who'd been speaking 30 seconds ago had disappeared completely. Kathy, please. Just one word. Just say, Mr. Montgomery. Diane's voice was quiet but firm. Maybe give her some space. He looked up at Diane like he'd forgotten she existed, then back at his daughter. His hands were shaking. How long has this been happening? She just started this morning. Today was the first time. Marvin stood abruptly, ran both hands through his hair. Kathy, sweetheart, go upstairs. Take your tablet. Daddy needs to talk to Diane. Kathy fled. Diane heard the small feet pounding up the stairs, a door closing with careful softness. Marvin paced the kitchen, his breath coming fast and shallow. You need to tell me everything. Every single detail. So Diane did. The 6-week progression. The colored pencils. The parallel play with coloring books. The shift from elaborate breakfasts to simple foods. The drawings that got more complex. The comfortable silence that became its own language. I didn't do anything special, Mr. Montgomery. I just sat with her. Kids don't need fixing. They need someone who'll be still. Marvin sank into a chair at the kitchen counter like his legs had given out. For a long moment, he just stared at his hands. It's been 730 days since my wife's funeral, he said finally. That's the last time Kathy spoke. The story came out in fragments. Elena's 2-year battle with breast cancer. Kathy watching her mother disappear by inches, the hair, the weight, the light in her eyes. The funeral where Kathy had tried to climb into the casket, screaming without sound. The selective mutism diagnosis 6 months later, when it became clear the silence wasn't temporary. Dr. Patricia Whitmore. Dr. Michael Chin. Karen Rodriguez. Play therapy, art therapy, music therapy. Medications. Marvin's voice was hollow. I've spent over $100,000 trying to get my daughter back. He looked up at Diane with something raw in his eyes. And the maid did it with dollar store colored pencils and peanut butter. The words landed like a slap. The maid. Not her name. Not Diane, who'd spent 6 weeks earning a little girl's trust. Just the hired help who'd stumbled into something she had no credentials for. But she saw his genuine pain underneath the thoughtless words. This was a man drowning. I need you to keep doing whatever you're doing. He stood, already reaching for his phone. I'll pay you. Extra hours. Whatever you need. Diane hesitated. She knew attachment was dangerous for someone like her. Someone who'd learned in 18 years of foster care that the things you loved got taken away. But she thought of Kathy's small voice, rusty and brave. I'll stay. For her. But this isn't about money. Marvin nodded, already distracted, already scrolling through contacts. I'll call Dr. Whitmore. She needs to know about this breakthrough. She'll know how to build on the progress. Warning bells clanged in Diane's head. Maybe just let Kathy go at her own pace? I appreciate your help, Diane. He was already dialing. But Dr. Whitmore is a professional. She'll know what to do. 2 hours late, Marvin finally left for work. Diane climbed the stairs to Kathy's room, knocked softly. No answer. She opened the door to find the little girl curled on her bed, facing the wall, non-responsive again. Diane sat on the floor beside the bed. It's okay, sweetheart. Your dad was just surprised. That's a good thing. You did something brave. Silence stretched. Then Kathy's hand emerged from under the covers, dropped a piece of paper over the edge. Diane picked it up. A drawing of 3 people at a table. A girl in the middle, a woman on one side, a man on the other. All holding hands. She folded it carefully, slipped it into her uniform pocket. That's when she knew she was in trouble. Because she was already attached. And people like her didn't get to keep the things they loved. Dr. Patricia Whitmore arrived at 4 o'clock sharp, heels clicking across marble like a countdown. Early 50s, silver-streaked hair in a severe bun, designer suit that cost more than Diane's car. She carried her credentials like weapons, Yale PhD, publications, board certifications all framed in the leather portfolio under her arm. Her eyes found Diane standing awkwardly by the kitchen counter. The assessment was instantaneous and cold. "And you are?" "The housekeeper, ma'am." "I see." A pause that said everything. "Mr. Montgomery mentioned you've been spending time with Kathy." The plush home office had been converted into a therapy suite, one-way glass installed, recording equipment mounted. Dr. Whitmore positioned herself behind the glass with Marvin and a practice supervisor, all three watching like Diane was a specimen under microscope. "Just do what you normally do," Marvin's voice came through the intercom. Diane felt her skin prickle. Being observed like a zoo animal performing tricks. But she brought out the coloring books anyway, sat across from Kathy at the small table. 10 minutes of comfortable silence. "Try to engage her verbally, please." Dr. Whitmore's voice, clipped and impatient. "Kathy doesn't like being pushed. I need to assess verbal response capability." Diane ignored her. Kept coloring. Gradually, Kathy's shoulders dropped. She reached for the purple pencil. "Can we do the garden page?" A whisper, barely audible. Diane slid the coloring book over. Kathy traced a flower with careful precision. "The purple flowers. Like Mom's garden." "Purple was her favorite?" Kathy nodded. "And yellow." "Sunflowers." Later, in Dr. Whitmore's office, Diane waited in the hallway while they discussed her like she wasn't human. "I observed 17 verbal exchanges. Remarkable for the severity of selective mutism." Dr. Whitmore's voice carried through the door. "But Mr. Montgomery, your housekeeper stumbled onto something through luck and the child's comfort with non-authority figures. Without proper therapeutic framework, this could create unhealthy attachment patterns." "So Diane's approach is working?" Marvin sounded confused. "Kathy is forming what we call safety person dependency. Speaking only to one individual who represents no threat. This can actually impede broader recovery if not properly managed. The goal is generalized communication, not performance for a single person." Diane's hands clenched. She recognized what this was, territory protection. $400 an hour was worth defending. "I appreciate that Diane cares," Dr. Whitmore continued. "But she lacks training. She doesn't understand developmental trauma frameworks or evidence-based interventions. Left unmonitored, she could actually harm Kathy's progress." Diane has been studying child psychology online. "Online courses aren't Yale-supervised clinical training, Mr. Montgomery. There's a reason therapy requires licensing." The sting landed deep. Maybe Dr. Whitmore was right. Maybe Diane was out of her depth, pretending to be something she wasn't. Maybe she should quit before she damaged Kathy more. Then she remembered Kathy's whisper, like Mom's garden. Not a therapeutic intervention. Not an evidence-based framework. Just a little girl remembering her mother through purple flowers. Marvin found her in the hallway. "I'd like to extend your hours. 7 to 6, Monday through Friday. Proper hourly increase. But Dr. Whitmore will supervise, set therapeutic boundaries." Diane nodded. "For Kathy." 2 weeks passed. Kathy spoke more, about homework, about drawings, about what Diane's apartment looked like. They made art together, ate lunch together, built something fragile and precious. Marvin started coming home earlier, watching them through the doorway with something like envy in his eyes. And Dr. Whitmore watched too, from a distance, calculating. Week 8, Kathy asked about Diane's family over grilled cheese cut into triangles. Diane explained foster care carefully, the string of temporary homes, aging out at 18 with a garbage bag of belongings and nowhere to go. "So nobody kept you?" Kathy's voice was small. "Not yet, sweetie. That's not fair. You're the best." Week 9, Kathy spoke in front of Marvin for the first time. Just 2 words as she climbed the stairs to bed. "Good night, Daddy." Marvin broke down crying after her door closed, standing in the hallway with his hand over his mouth. Week 10, the school called. Kathy had whispered an answer to her teacher during reading circle. A small victory that felt enormous. Then Friday afternoon, a woman in a navy blazer arrived unannounced. Jennifer Santos, DCF social worker, professional but kind, carrying a manila folder that would destroy everything. Anonymous report filed regarding concerns about inappropriate boundary violations between minor child and domestic employee. Marvin's face went white. "This is absurd." Diane has been helping my daughter. I understand, Mr. Montgomery. But we have to take all reports seriously, especially involving children with documented trauma. Ms. Santos's voice was gentle, but immovable. Standard protocol requires we suspend contact between Diane and Kathy pending investigation. Diane heard it from the kitchen and knew immediately who'd filed the report. She found Dr. Whitmore in the driveway, climbing into her Mercedes. You did this. Dr. Whitmore turned, expression perfectly composed. I filed a professional concern. Kathy needs proper therapeutic care, not attachment to the help. I haven't done anything wrong. You're not qualified, Diane. You're playing therapist without understanding the damage you could cause. I'm not playing anything. I'm just caring about a child. Exactly. You're emotionally involved. That's not professional. That's dangerous. The words hung between them like a verdict. Diane couldn't stay in the house, but invisible to Kathy again. Couldn't bear being the ghost she'd been when she first arrived. She chose to leave entirely. Diane, please, Marvin said. We'll fight this. I've been fighting my whole life, Mr. Montgomery. I know how this ends. People like me don't win against people like her. Ms. Santos supervised the goodbye. Diane found Kathy in the playroom, surrounded by drawings. I have to go away for a little while, sweetheart. Kathy's eyes filled. She shook her head violently. It's not forever. Just until some grown-up stuff gets sorted out. Please don't leave me too. Kathy's voice broke. Everyone leaves me. The words shattered something in Diane's chest. I'm not leaving because I want to. And I'll come back if I can. I promise. Kathy pressed Benny into Diane's hands. So you remember. Week 1 without Diane. Kathy stopped speaking completely. Week 2. Stopped eating properly. Nightmares returned. Marvin called Diane's cell, desperate. She's asking for you. Writing your name over and over. Diane cried in her studio apartment. I can't. The investigation. I could lose everything. Ms. Santos visited. Were you trying to replace her mother? No. God, no. I was just trying to be present. To give her something steady. That's all. Thursday of week 2, Greens Farms Academy called. Kathy had locked herself in the bathroom, scratched Diane into the stall wall with a pencil, wouldn't come out. Marvin found his daughter curled on grimy tile, nonverbal, clutching a drawing of the three of them. He sat outside the stall, his $3,000 suit on the floor, and talked through the door. I'm sorry, Pumpkin Benny. I'm sorry I've been so bad at this. I'm sorry I thought money could fix you. You were never broken. I was. And Diane knew that. She knew what you needed. And I took her away. But I'm going to fix this. I promise. 11 p.m. on Thursday, Marvin Montgomery pulled into the parking lot of a corporate office complex in downtown Bridgeport. The kind of building that was gleaming and modern during business hours, hollow and fluorescent lit after dark. He found Diane on the 3rd floor, vacuuming a conference room that still smelled like stale coffee and someone's leftover Chinese food. She saw him, turned off the vacuum. Mr. Montgomery, you can't be here. I know. I'm violating the DCF order. I don't care. They stood in the artificial light, the space between them full of class and history and desperation. Kathy is in the hospital. Overnight observation. She hasn't eaten in 3 days. She's not sleeping. She's not speaking. The school psychiatrist says she's regressing back to where she was 2 years ago. Diane's face crumpled. I'm sorry. I really am. But I can't help. The investigation. I'll handle the investigation. I'll get the best lawyers. I'll fight DCF. I'll fight Dr. Whitmore. I'll fight whoever I need to fight. His voice cracked. I need you to come back. Something broke in Diane. All the careful professionalism, all the swallowed dignity, all the years of making herself small. And then what, Mr. Montgomery? I come back, she gets attached, and then what? Another anonymous report. Another investigation? You fire me when the board gets uncomfortable with the black maid being too close to your white daughter. You know what the worst part is? Her voice rose. I knew better. I knew better than to love her. Because people like you don't let people like me keep what we love. I'm not her mother. I'm not her family. I'm the help. And when the help forgets their place, they get removed. So no, I'm not coming back. Because I can't watch her be taken from me again. I already lost her once. I can't do it twice. Marvin didn't argue. Didn't make promises. Instead, he sank into a conference room chair and broke down completely. The first time he'd cried in front of anyone since Elena's funeral. You're right. About all of it. I've been a coward. His voice was raw, stripped of all executive polish. I've been hiding behind work and checkbooks and specialists because I didn't want to feel. Because if I felt, I'd have to admit I lost my wife and I'm losing my daughter and it's my fault. Elena used to tell me I was too focused on titles and credentials, that I valued people's resumes instead of their hearts. And she was right, because the most important person in my daughter's life right now is someone I called the Maid for 2 years without ever learning your last name. He looked up at her with red-rimmed eyes. Her name was Elena Rivera Montgomery. She taught high school English in Norwalk. Her parents were immigrants from Colombia. She grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment with 4 siblings. My parents hated her at first, thought she was beneath me, thought I was marrying down. She was the smartest, kindest, most real person I ever met. And she would have loved you, Diane, because you're just like her. Present, patient, real. And I've been treating you the same way my parents treated her. Like you're not good enough. Like your care doesn't count because it doesn't have a price tag. Diane felt her throat tighten. I'm not asking you to come back as the Maid, Marvin continued. I'm asking you to come back as, I don't even know the title. Nanny feels wrong. Therapist isn't legal. But Kathy's person, the person who sees her. And I can't promise it'll be easy. But I can promise I'll fight for you. Publicly. With my name and my money and everything I have. Because my daughter loves you. And I've spent 2 years trying to buy her happiness, when what she needed was right there. Someone who'd just sit with her while she colored. Diane's hands were shaking. She gripped the vacuum handle for support. If I come back, things change. I'm not the invisible help. I'm staff. Respected staff. I want a real contract. Real title. Support for finishing my degree. And I need you to actually parent your daughter. Because I can't do this alone. She needs you too. She needs you to show up. Not just with your wallet. With your actual self. Deal. All of it. Whatever you want. I want you to tell DCF the truth. That you need me. That Kathy needs me. And that you'll go to court if necessary to prove it. Marvin stood. I'll call my lawyers tonight. We'll request an emergency hearing. You'll be there. I'll be there. And Kathy will have the chance to tell them herself. Diane felt something loosen in her chest. She's in the hospital? Yale, New Haven. Pediatric psychiatric observation. Then we should go. Now. Rules or no rules, that baby shouldn't be alone. 1 a.m., they entered the hospital room together. Kathy lay under harsh fluorescent lights, for in her tiny arm delivering fluids her body desperately needed. Her eyes fluttered open, landed on Diane, and tears came immediately. Diane sat on the bed. Kathy crawled into her lap, buried her face in Diane's shoulder, her small body shaking with silent sobs. Marvin watched from the doorway, understanding for the first time what love actually looked like. You came back, Kathy whispered against Diane's neck. Always, baby. Always. Monday morning, 9 a.m., the Department of Children and Families Administrative Office felt like a courtroom without the formality. Gray walls, fluorescent lighting, a conference table scarred by years of families being dissected and reassembled. Margaret Chin, hearing officer with 20 years in child welfare, sat at the head. Marvin Montgomery and his attorney on one side. Diane next to them, spine straight, hands folded to keep them from shaking. Dr. Patricia Whitmore across the table, credentials stacked like armor. Jennifer Santos, the DCF investigator, took notes. Kathy waited in another room with a child advocate. Dr. Whitmore established her credentials first. Yale Ph.D., 15 years clinical experience, published researcher. Her voice was measured, professional, deadly. Kathy Montgomery is exhibiting what we call safety person dependency. Speaking exclusively to one individual without therapeutic framework. She didn't look at Diane. Ms. Williams, while well-meaning, lacks the clinical training to understand she may be inadvertently reinforcing avoidance behaviors and creating unhealthy attachment patterns. The child has transferred her attachment to her deceased mother onto Ms. Williams, which is preventing her from processing grief appropriately. Her pen tapped the table. Additionally, the boundary violations are concerning. Ms. Williams was employed as domestic staff, but has assumed a pseudo-parental role without proper vetting or professional oversight. I recommend supervised therapeutic visitation only, with Ms. Williams participating as adjunct support within my professional framework. Marvin's attorney nodded to him. Marvin cleared his throat, and when he spoke, there was no executive polish left. My daughter hadn't spoken in 2 years. She ate maybe 1 meal a day. She had night terrors. She was disappearing inside herself, and I didn't know how to reach her. His voice cracked. I hired the best specialists. Spent over $100,000 on therapy, medications, consultations. Nothing worked. Then my housekeeper did what I couldn't do. She just sat with my daughter, and my daughter started speaking. The attorney leaned forward. What changed in the 2 weeks Ms. Williams was removed from contact? Everything we'd gained was lost. Kathy stopped eating, stopped speaking, ended up hospitalized for dehydration. Marvin turned to Dr. Whitmore. You talk about unhealthy attachment, but my daughter was dying from the lack of attachment. Diane gave her something to hold on to. Jennifer Santos presented her investigation findings. Clean background check. School staff interviews noting improvement. Home visit observations showing appropriate boundaries. Ms. Williams appears to have formed a genuine, healthy bond based on patience and consistency rather than replacement of parental role. She paused. However, the anonymous report raises legitimate questions about credential requirements for individuals providing therapeutic support to traumatized children. Dr. Whitmore's attorney stood. Ms. Williams, what are your qualifications to provide psychological support to a child with selective mutism? Diane's throat was dry. I don't have a degree. Yet. I'm working on certification in child psychology through online courses. She forced herself to look at the attorney. But qualifications aren't the same as being qualified. I spent 11 years in foster care. I know what it's like when adults treat you like a problem to solve instead of a person to know. I never tried to be Kathy's therapist. I just tried to be present, steady, safe. But without training, how can you know you're not causing harm? The same way every parent knows. You pay attention. You listen. You care more about the child than about being right. Diane looked at Dr. Whitmore. And with respect, doctor, you've been seeing Kathy for 18 months. You know her diagnosis. But do you know her favorite color? Do you know why she calls her Rabbit Benny? Do you know she draws sunflowers because her mother's garden had them? I'm not saying credentials don't matter. I'm saying they're not the only thing that matters. Officer Chen's voice cut through the tension. I'd like to speak with Kathy, if she's comfortable. The child advocate brought her in. Small, scared, clutching Benny. Diane started to stand. Marvin's hand on her arm. Let her speak for herself. Hi, Kathy. I'm Ms. Chen. You're not in trouble. Officer Chen's voice was gentle. We just want to understand what makes you feel safe. Silence stretched. I know talking is hard. You can write or draw if you prefer. Kathy looked at Diane, at her father, then at Dr. Whitmore. She took the offered paper and marker. Drew for 3 minutes, Diane, Kathy, and Marvin at a table, holding hands. Pushed it forward. That's beautiful. Can you tell me about it? Long pause. Then, that's my family. Your dad and... My dad and Diane. Clearer now. Dr. Whitmore leaned forward. Kathy, you understand Diane isn't your mother, correct? Kathy looked at her directly. I know. My mom died. I remember. First time acknowledging it out loud. But Mom used to say families aren't just blood. They're who stays. Looking at Diane. Diane stays. She turned to Officer Chin. I talk to Diane because she doesn't try to fix me. She just lets me be sad sometimes. And she lets me be happy sometimes. And she doesn't make me choose. Dr. Whitmore asks lots of questions about my feelings. But Diane just feels them with me. Her small voice grew stronger. I don't need Diane because I'm broken. I need her because she makes me feel like I'm not. Officer Chin was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm closing this investigation. I find no evidence of inappropriate conduct, grooming, or harmful boundary violations. While Ms. Williams lacks traditional credentials, the evidence shows her presence has been therapeutically beneficial. To Marvin, if you choose to employ Ms. Williams in a childcare capacity, I recommend formalizing her role with appropriate contract and support for her continuing education. To Dr. Whitmore, Doctor, I appreciate your professional concern. But credentials aren't a substitute for connection. The goal is the child's well-being, not professional gatekeeping. To Diane, Ms. Williams, you have a gift. Don't let anyone tell you that caring isn't valid without a degree. Dr. Whitmore stood, gathering materials. This is highly irregular. The field has standards for a reason. Marvin's voice was steel. Then maybe the field needs to examine those standards. You billed me $28,000 over 18 months, and my daughter got worse. Diane gave her 6 weeks, and my daughter spoke. Dr. Whitmore looked at Diane. I hope you understand the responsibility you're taking on. When this fails, there won't be a credentialed professional to blame. If it fails, I'll blame myself. That's what love is, Dr. Whitmore. You get the credit and the blame. You don't get to hide behind credentials. Dr. Whitmore left. In the hallway, Kathy ran to Diane, jumped into her arms. Marvin watched, then pulled out his phone. I need an employment contract drawn up. Nanny and educational specialist position. And I need family medical leave forms. I'm taking 3 weeks off. Starting today. 3 weeks later, Diane Williams signed a contract that changed her life. Family care specialist and educational companion. $65,000 a year plus benefits and tuition support for her degree. The guest house on the property, once just storage for holiday decorations and forgotten furniture, converted into her own apartment. Small but hers. The first space she'd ever had that wasn't temporary. Marvin took parental leave. Actually took it. 3 weeks of being present instead of productive. The new routine formed like scar tissue, rough at first but healing. Mornings, Marvin made breakfast, badly, burning toast and oversalting eggs, while Diane helped Kathy get ready for school. After school, homework with Diane at the dining table, then family dinner with Marvin home by 6. Bedtimes, Marvin read to Kathy while Diane stepped back, letting the father-daughter bond rebuild itself without her as buffer. Weekends they did normal family things. Parks, museums, grocery shopping where Kathy pushed the cart and Marvin forgot half the list and Diane laughed at both of them. Marvin's first attempt at braiding Kathy's hair was a disaster, lopsided and already falling out before they reached the car. But Kathy laughed. Actually laughed. And Marvin tried again the next day. He attended school conferences, volunteered for field trip supervision, started talking about Elena without his voice breaking. Your mom would have found that hilarious. Processing his own grief finally, in therapy with a different doctor. Kathy spoke in full sentences at home now. Whispered to her teacher and classmates. Got invited to a birthday party, her first social event in 2 years. She still had hard days. Anniversaries. Her mother's birthday. Elena's favorite song on the radio. But now she had vocabulary for grief. I miss her today. And support. Diane sat with her. Marvin didn't try to fix it, just held her. Then Marvin's parents visited from Boston. His mother walked through the house with pursed lips and careful questions. This is highly unusual, Marvin. The help living on property? What will people think? Kathy overheard. Ran to Diane's apartment crying. Diane held her. Some people won't understand, baby. But we know the truth. Marvin found his mother in the living room. You said the same thing about Elena. That she wasn't good enough. And you were wrong then too. Diane is family. Either you accept that, or you don't see Kathy. Your choice. His mother eventually apologized. Saw how happy Kathy was. Saw how Marvin had finally stopped drowning. The spring concert came in May. Kathy's class performing songs about growth and light. She had a solo line in This Little Light of Mine. The entire family sat in the audience. Marvin, Diane, the now accepting grandparents. Rows of parents with phones raised. Kathy stepped to the microphone. Found them in the crowd. Her voice rang clear. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Everyone in that gymnasium knew the weight of those words. Standing ovation. Marvin crying openly. Diane crying too, not caring who saw. Later that night, after Kathy fell asleep clutching Benny, Marvin found Diane in the kitchen making tea. I've been meaning to ask you something. Are you happy with this arrangement? Because I know it's not what you signed up for. Diane stirred honey into her cup. I didn't sign up for any of this. I signed up to clean houses and save for a degree. But I got something better. I got a family. I got a little girl who calls me when she has nightmares, who tells me about her day, who trusts me. So yeah, I'm happy. Scared sometimes, but happy. Scared of what? That it won't last. That I'll wake up and it'll be gone. I've never had anything permanent before. Marvin was quiet for a moment. Then, let's make it permanent. Legally. I want to set up an official guardianship arrangement. If anything happens to me, you'll have legal rights to Kathy. You'll be her family. Officially. Diane's hands shook. You'd do that? You already are her family, Diane. Let's just make the paperwork match the truth. The attorney's office was downtown, all dark wood and leather chairs. Diane Williams signed documents that made her Kathy's legal guardian and emergency contact. The three of them left together, Kathy holding both their hands, swinging between them on the sidewalk. A family not born, but built. Not perfect, but real. 6 months later, September brought Kathy's 8th birthday, and a backyard transformed. Purple and yellow everywhere, Elena's colors. Sunflowers nodding in the new memorial garden. 20 kids from Kathy's class running through grass that had once been pristine and untouchable. Marvin's parents chatting with Diane's foster sister Keisha, who'd driven up from Atlanta. Marvin himself in jeans and a t-shirt, hands dirty from setting up tables, comfortable in a way he'd never been in his expensive suits. Last year's birthday had been quiet dinner, just Marvin and silent Kathy, both pretending to be okay. This year, Kathy ran with friends, laughing, speaking freely, fully present. Diane watched from the porch of her guest house. Keisha leaned against the railing beside her. Look at you. Got your own place, almost done with certification, got a family. Keisha shook her head. Never thought I'd see the day Diane Williams settled down. I'm not settled. I'm home. There's a difference. That little girl loves you like her own mom. Diane's throat tightened. I'm not replacing her mom. Just honoring her. Elena wanted Kathy to be happy. I'm helping with that. Marvin called everyone to the memorial garden. A new stone marker read, Elena's garden, where love grows. Kathy's idea, everyone would plant something. Kids pressed wildflower seeds into soil. Adults planted perennials that would return year after year. Kathy planted a sunflower with Diane, then another with Marvin. Then she called Diane forward. I want to plant one for you, because you grew me back. The birthday cake came out, homemade by Marvin, slightly lopsided but covered in purple frosting. Presents opened, books and toys and typical kid stuff. Then Kathy handed Diane a small wrapped box. This one's for you. Inside was a frame. Kathy's drawing, 3 figures in a garden full of sunflowers. Bottom caption in careful child handwriting. My family. Names labeled, Dad. Kathy. And Diane, my forever person. Diane broke down completely. Years of holding herself together, of being professional and appropriate and careful, shattered. She pulled Kathy into her arms and sobbed. Don't cry. Kathy patted her back. Happy tears are okay. Mom used to say that. Your mom was right about a lot of things. Evening came. The party wound down. Parents collected tired children. Marvin's parents hugged Diane goodbye, real affection now, not obligation. Keisha promised to visit for Thanksgiving. Diane and Marvin cleaned up together, collecting paper plates and deflating balloons. Elena would have loved this, Marvin said quietly. All of it. She would have loved you. I wish I could have met her. In a way, you did. Everything good I'm trying to be now, I learned from her. He tied off a garbage bag. She used to tell me, people aren't projects, Marvin. You can't fix them with money or management. You just have to show up. I finally understand what she meant. Because I watched you do it. You showed up. Every day. No agenda. Just presence. That's all Kathy needed. Someone to show up and stay. That's all any of us need. Sunset turned Long Island Sound into liquid gold. The 3 of them sat on the porch steps, Kathy between Diane and Marvin, looking at Elena's garden. Sunflowers glowed in the evening light. I told Mom about Diane, Kathy said softly. Marvin's hand found his daughter's. What did you tell her? That I'm okay now. That Dad's okay now. That we found someone who helps us remember her without being sad all the time. She leaned into Diane. I think she sent Diane to us. Because Mom always took care of us. Even now. That's a beautiful way to think about it, sweetie. Can we do this every year? Plant flowers for Mom. Every single year, Marvin promised. I promise. And Diane will be here? Diane and Marvin exchanged a glance. All the legal documents in the world couldn't say what needed to be said. But simple words could. Every single year. I promise too. Kathy relaxed between them, safe in the space between loss and love, between grief and healing, between the family she'd lost and the family she'd found. The sunflowers swayed in the breeze. Somewhere, perhaps, Elena Montgomery smiled. Because this moment of her daughter laughing in a garden, held by people who showed up, this was exactly what she would have wanted. 3 broken people had built a family from pieces of loss and found something whole. Not perfect, not traditional, but real, and permanent. And theirs. The kind of family that doesn't ask for credentials or resumes. Just presence. Just love. Just the courage to stay.